All right, this is going to be my white truck build video 1. And on this build, or on this video, we're going to go ahead and work on the chassis. And real quick, I want to show you the way the instructions show to build the chassis rails. And then I'm going to show you how I build the chassis rails, or how I'm building it for this truck. So I have built a couple of the white trucks already, and I built the chassis according to the directions, but I wanted a little different look. And so that's why I'm changing this up. So the directions say to take 4 of the 12-inch angle strips, and you overlap them in the middle, 4 holes on each strip. So you've got 4 holes overlapping. So you take 2 like that, and then you take the other 2. You're going to do that same overlap, and then those go together in that manner. And then we put a 1/4 inch screw through according to the directions, and that gets a nut on the back side. And with chubby fingers, this isn't always the easiest thing to get that nut started. And it'd be nice if you could use a square socket on these, but what I've found is that a lot of times in these 100-year-old nuts, the inconsistency is great enough that they won't go into the socket. So I think what I'm going to have to do is, I do not have a 9/32 square socket, so I think I need to invest in one of those, which is one size up from the 1/4 inch, and it should allow for the difference in the way the nuts are made. They're just on one side, sometimes they're 1/4 inch or very close, and then the other side is sometimes smaller, sometimes it's bigger. So then a second 1/4 inch bolt goes through here, and then that creates what the instructions call, you're building a channel girder. So that creates a C channel, and then you're ready to start adding the detail to this, or to the other parts to this, for building one of the chassis rails. So that's the way the instructions have this built, and perfectly fine way to do it. If you're following the directions exactly, then that would be the way that you want to build the chassis. So in the early 7.5 Erector sets that came out in 1926, they had a different girder. So it was an angled girder, or an angled strip, but instead of the one side being slots like this, it had a detail more like these 10-inch girders. And so I wanted, for this build, I'm using all just parts from the 7.5 set, and I wanted to make it look more like that 26 frame rail. So this is what I came up with. And what I've done here is taken the flat girder, and I have 2 10-inch, and then here I have a 2.5 inch. And I've used 4 of the 10-inch and 2 of the 2.5 inch. And then on the top and on the bottom, I've used these perforated strips. So I have 2 of the 41 hole, and I have 1 of the 21 hole. And I'll show you. And then these are the mounts for the axles, and I have those mounted in the exact same position that they would mount on the angle girder. Now, I did have to do a little bit of pre-planning here for the chassis and where these parts will go. So what I did is I took one of the angle girders and I held it up to the strip. And what you find is that for every 2 holes you have on the angle girder, you have 3 holes on the flat strips. So I just started with it lined up at the front and the back on holes. And then I actually wrote on here, you might not see it in the video, but I just did 2, 4, 6, 8. And that way I know which holes to use in these strips. I can pull this up real quick and it shows me which holes are the corresponding holes in here. So I have the length of this is exactly the same as the channel. And then I have the axles mounted in exactly the same spot that they would mount on the channel girder. So that's one girder side that's assembled. And when I assembled this, I made sure to line up the holes on both sides, or the cutouts on both sides. So it's straight through, you can see straight through. And I just think that's going to give a neat detail to this. Now, one thing I don't like is where I have these screws positioned top to bottom. It would be nicer if these were able to go right here and it would hide that screw. So as I'm building, I might adjust that a little bit. Now on some, I could run one through here, move this screw over, that type of thing, but it may not be possible. And if not, that's okay. I'll just go ahead and leave it like that. It's not a terrible thing, and it's just a few of the screws that are in that position. So just to show you how I built this girder, what I did is I started out with these flat strips, and to get the length right, these have to be overlapped 6 holes in each strip. And then for the screws going through here, the 2 on each end are the original Erector bolts, and they are the 7/8 inch long. The one here and the one I'm going to put in over here, these are new screws or new bolts, and they are 3/4 of an inch long, and I am going to use an Erector nut on the back. And the reason for that is I did buy a bunch of new fasteners, and the new fasteners, the bolt heads are fairly similar. They're a little larger than the bolt heads that came with the Erector sets, but not a lot. They do look nice when you use them on a build, but the nuts have an issue. And the issue with the square nuts is that they're much larger than the original Erector nuts. So the comparison between the two nuts, maybe I can lay it out here, is pretty huge. And the problem then is when you use one of these on the back side, you can't get it into the groove that's created in these flat girders. So in order to be able to do that, you have to use the original size Erector nuts. So if anybody watching this video has a source for these smaller size in the square nuts, please drop a comment and let me know. I have looked a lot and I have not been able to find anything. So now that this is together, what I do is you noticed I added a nut on the back side, and then I add another nut. And this is going to allow the other strip on the other side to bump up against that, and it makes it very strong, and it also gives you something to tighten against on the other side. So I did not come up with this technique. I saw somebody use it on a build that I saw online, and so I borrowed it, and I think I know the person who I first saw use it. I don't know if they're the one that came up with it, but I'll do a little checking, and I would definitely give them credit for coming up with this idea. But it's a great way to do it. And what I'm doing here, I just figured out the spacing that I needed on the inside of the nuts, and I have 2 lines on my piece of paper here, and I'm just lining the screws up. I'll have to do a little bit of adjusting, but that's the basic lineup that I need. So I'm going to start with the 21 strip piece on here. So that just goes on the 2 ends. And then again, I'm going to overlap my 41 strip and my 41 strip. And then I can start just by laying out 2 of these flat strips, and I'll just go through here and double check the spacing. Anytime you're doubling these up, it does impact the spacing a little bit. So that's something that has to be adjusted. And then in the other spots, you want these nuts up tight behind where the flat strip is going to be. So it allows you to tighten up against it, and it gives it the extra strength that the chassis needs. So I've got this middle one lined up here. I'm going to go ahead and put a nut on that. And snug that nut up a little bit. And then I'll do the same over here on this side. That one looks really good. So that's not bad. I had one out of 4 that were in the right spot. Now this is a toy truck that we're building, so the precision that you want to put into it is up to you. It's not like you're going to be driving it around, although you might have kids that will like to drive it around. So I have grandkids that'll probably end up playing with this a little bit. So to make it a little extra sturdy will not hurt anything. And I'm switching back and forth here. I do have in these little Craftsman wrenches a 9/32. So when I get the nut where I can tell right away when I grab it, I can tell that it's off center. I go ahead and just grab the 9/32 and save myself a little bit of hassle. This one was a little too far out. The other thing to keep in mind is with a little massaging, you can bring these pieces together. So right here, I got a couple that probably just had a little bit of a bend to them, so those can be straightened back out. But without even having 2 screws in here, this is still very solid this way. So what I'm going to do is come back here then and make sure this is all lining up well, and it is. And I got a little ahead of myself. I'm going to back these 2 nuts off. And I'm going to put on the springs right away. So that's the rear spring, and then this is the front spring. And with the springs, this is very important, and I learned this on the first build that I put together. The quality control at Gilbert was either very low or maybe there was none at all. And so as you are putting something like this together, and especially when you're using these flat bent springs, I found that the holes here can be off, and this hole up on top where the axle mounts, I have a couple of these springs where this hole is off by a full 1/4 of an inch. So with that, what I'll end up doing, I'll use those on custom builds where I'm going to paint the parts, and I'll actually take that spring out to the garage, I'll weld that hole shut, clean it up, and then I'll drill a new hole. But I pre-matched these, so I made sure that as I lined everything up, these holes were in the exact same spot on each side. And I'm going to leave that one just upside down here for a moment. And now I want to make a mirror to that one. So what I did is I started at the rear. So I'm going to start with my 2.5 inch strip. And I'm going to put that strip down first, and then this next one is going to go on top of that. And then these are the new 5/8 bolts, and with these I could have used 7/8 erectors. They would have stuck through further on the back side, and then I thought about putting them in and then going back and cutting them off. But as I think about that, the parts, when you have 100-year-old parts that are nice, you got to think about, what type of modification do I want to make? So the trucks that I've built as custom trucks, I have, talking and getting ahead of myself here, I have customized parts, but I've customized parts that were not really nice parts. They had issues. So when I'm doing the customizing on this stuff, those parts I don't mind running them through the sandblaster and cleaning the rust off of them and taking the finish off of them and then repainting them. I do have a truck that I'll show in a video here pretty quick that I did that is all original parts, or almost all original parts. And then I went ahead and stripped everything down, and I powder coated all of the parts. Just want to make sure that I'm getting these together in the correct way. This one is actually backwards. Now, the other thing I need to make sure that I'm matching up, and I am not. So I have it upside down. So I got to take this off. I do want the grooves, the cutouts in the frame sections to match. And right now I've got these flipped upside down. So I'm just going to take this one off real quick. At this point it's easy. It's only one screw. And I just have to flip each of these pieces around. And I am being careful to put this screw through in the correct direction. So this is the left side frame rail. This other one is going to be the right side rail. So I just need to make sure that I have these screws going through the correct way so that the ends of the bolt and the nut are on the inside of the chassis, not on the outside. And then I try to make sure that I put everything together in the same way so that it matches up from side to side. That just makes the final truck look nicer. All right, now when I hold this up, I still have to do it one more time. So I guess I need to pay better attention here. The other side is correct. The side that's facing down is correct. This one will be correct now. There we go. What do they say? Get it right, build it twice. So I'm on 3 times now with this piece, but the important thing is that it looks right. Well, I might as well keep my pattern going the correct way in here. See, I was smart that time and I checked it. I'm learning. Checked it to make sure that it was placed correctly, and it was not. But now it is. So this one I just need to match up. Had it right the first time. So I'm sorry if this is causing you pain watching me fiddle around with which direction to put these. If I would have been smart, I'd have laid them out in the correct way before the video. And I probably would have moved them for some reason as I was demonstrating and talking. So this one, the one strip is popping out up on top. I don't like that, so I'm going to go back and just make a little adjustment here. I'm just going to pull this a little closer together. I loosen the one nut on the inside, and now I'm retightening the nut on the outside. Switch over to my 9/32 wrench. That one's too tight. There, now that'll let that pull together like it should. And the nice thing about having those nuts on the inside is that you can snug these up pretty good without having to worry about holding them from the backside with a screwdriver. All right, so that is the right side frame rail. Here is the left side frame rail. So now I am ready to add the axles, and once I add the axles, I'll get everything squared up. So that'll be the next video 2. We'll get the axle mounted, put a couple of frame braces in, and move forward from there. Thanks for watching.